This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. So, knowing that Fender just brought out this American vintage range, which is reissuing some of the classic stuff, I had that 57 Strat that they sent, and so I sent a message to Mike over at Rose Morris, and I said, have you got anything sort of equivalent from Tokai that I could maybe take a look at, maybe compare, because I think you as a viewer might be interested in seeing like a comparison of something similar, you know, the same sort of concept, and what you could get for the money. Maybe if it doesn't say Fender on it, it's not to say that you should or shouldn't buy anything. It's just going to be a comparison of what I hope are going to be two really cool guitars. So the case Tokai, and the guitar is kind of gorgeous. So this is a Japanese built Tokai. It's going to be poly finished, that's going to be the difference. But I'll go down and weigh it and see what it weighs. The neck is more C based than the Fender. Aside from that, it's also got slightly bigger frets, I'd suggest, and less of an amber hue to the neck. But yeah. So I think, although they might look quite similar, spec-wise these things are a little bit different. So as I say, this is going to be a poly kind of thing, which is what Fender did eventually, you know, start using, but I think people generally prefer the nitro idea. I think certainly the idea of a guitar kind of aging with you seems nice. This has got a couple of bird's eyes in the fretboard, I think slightly bigger frets, and as well I think this has a 9.5 inch radius, which is more in keeping with what most folks want from a guitar, although of course it's not vintage accurate necessarily. So yeah, that radius might be a point of contention for some. Single ply board. But in general, this one's playing really good too. It weighs about £8.02, so a little bit heavier than the Fender even, which isn't the lightest Strat in the world. One other difference, we've got the tone control is not wired to the bridge pickup. So you can do that sort of stuff with it. There is working on the bridge, so that's a slight difference in the circuitry. This guitar might be slightly, or the pickups at least might be slightly brighter. So I did have a thought that maybe the Tokai for the money was going to present something more than just a great value proposition. But I have to say the Fender does hold its own. The neck feels a little bit, you know, it just feels, I don't know whether it's slightly narrower this way. I'll check the specs on that. It does really hold its own with the Tokai, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. I've had the suspicion that maybe I'd be getting quite a lot more bang for buck with the Tokai, and the Tokai definitely holds its own. If it had come out to be like a much better playing guitar that felt exactly the same, you know, sounded better or whatever, or was lighter, I'd tell you that. But as it is, it came out £8, 2 ounces, which is a bit heavier than the Strat. The neck feels like a little bit more flat and maybe a little bit thinner as well. Not in a negative way, it's just like maybe a bit of a faster playing neck versus the 50s, which is like slightly chunkier and more of a V. This stays like a bit flatter most of the way up, partly because of the radius, partly because it's got more of a C shape. But this is a very fine guitar. Really lovely frets. So I'd say you can't go wrong with a Tokai, is basically what I've come to conclude after playing a bunch of the Japanese models. So if you're looking for a real bang for buck, then the Tokai I'd guess would be the way to go in terms of what you get for your money. The Fender I think is also really, really cool, and a bit more of that vintage flavour. You know, you've got the colour of the wood on the Tokai is certainly a little bit paler. There's a smaller neck pocket gap on the Tokai, as I suspected there might be, and there are less kind of finishing flaws in general, but it is a poly finish, and I think those tend to be easier to get more perfect finishes on, potentially, and won't age. The neck on the Tokai, more of that kind of flat C feeling versus the V of the Fender. The Fender, a bit of a chunkier neck, as well as, yeah, it's got a bit more of that vintage feel to it. Also, these pickups, I think, a little bit brighter, a little bit more scooped. These a bit more mid forward. I think I might drop that trem back a bit, and that might help the bending. The finishes, this has a little bit, I think, more stickiness to it, owing to the nitro thing. In time, that might go away. But yeah, you really cannot go wrong with the Tokais for the money, is my conclusion. Hope that's okay.